Last year, Chinese shipyards delivered 53% of the global tonnage, 6 times more than 20 years ago. This is a result of decades of state support, a process that has provided China with the world's largest navy. I'm Johanna Bota, and with me today is StoneX's Senior Vice President of Ocean Freight, Tom Beney. Welcome, Tom. Good to have you on. I want to start by talking about the fact that only 8% of global tonnage was delivered in 2002, but 53% last year. What does that shift mean for the world's shipping fleet?
Yeah, it's been an interesting growth path for China. The major shipbuilding countries before China were Japan and Korea, and they were producing somewhere around 78% of the world's fleet in the early 2000s. And now China has done a complete switch. Now they are producing the largest proportion of the world's new building orders, and Japan and Korea have reduced theirs considerably. Um, After years of development in technology, and I think it's fair to say that Chinese ships back in the early 2000s were not particularly good quality. But after years of technology investment, you can see that today they're very competitive in the global market, and many of the ship owning companies go to China to order their vessels. And I think it's good to understand that ships last roughly between 20 and 25 years on average. And so that percentage has been increasing and will increase further over the next 5 years. So we can see the Chinese built fleet in the markets increasing. But it's important to understand that the Chinese owned fleet is much less than that, probably around 19% of the fleet, and is Greece, in fact, is probably the second biggest ship owning nation in the world, which is pretty close to China.
So, does that mean then that China is building them, but they don't necessarily own all of them, right?
That's correct. That is correct. China does own a large amount of ships and is probably today the largest ship owner.
Okay, so they are the largest. Got it.
But it, but but only controlling around just under 20% of the world's fleet, which is not a particularly large percentage.
Now, China has not only expanded its share of the global shipping fleet that we were just talking about, but it's also driving the surge in bauxite demand. What does this impact, or how does this impact China's influence on the shipping markets?
So I think it's fair to say that China is the largest influence on dry bulk markets and has been for the last 30 years. What we're seeing right now in bauxite trading, which is bauxite is the raw material for uh, aluminum or
Yes.
aluminium
Aluminum,
production
I don't even know which accent I have anymore.
production worldwide, and China is the largest producer of aluminium in the world. So, um, we've seen massive increases in mineral deposits in West Africa, where they produce a lot of the bauxite, and that bauxite demand is coming from China. So, in the last 12 months, we've seen roughly 200 million tons of bauxite moved, and around about 80 to 85% of that goes to China.
Okay. And,
So
and
it has a big influence on the shipping market.
of course. And like I mentioned earlier, the People's Republic of China has been supporting its shipping industry for decades. Why and what motivates this long-term state backing?
Well, I think you have to start with the fact that all great trading nations in history have controlled large shipping fleets, and China in the last 30 years has moved a large portion of people out of subsistence farming and into the cities, and they needed steel, they needed um, uh, raw materials to make products for those people, houses. GDP of China was 25% was house building. So what makes a good shipbuilder? You know, you need a very cheap labor um, cost. You need a high amount of welders, a good steel production. You need large financial institutions, and you need to be by the coast. And China has developed that industry with the help of government support over the years. It has not been a straight run up. They've had their ups and downs, but now they are clearly the strongest shipbuilding nation in the world, and it's been a strategic goal for the Chinese government to build that industry. It provides a lot of employment, and I think what is concerning people today is that the percentage of Chinese-built ships in total has increased up to, you know, today, when we look at the order book, up to 80 to 90% of certain fleets are being built in China globally. And what may be even more important is that 95% of containers that are moved on container vessels are being built in China. So there is a very high concentration of that global industry in China today.
So is it fair to say then that China's government support has distorted the global market?
I don't I'm not sure I can say that they've distorted it. The fact, as I mentioned, that a large portion of Chinese population have moved out of subsistence farming into cities. I mean, just to give you a scale of that, we're looking at something like 600 million people over the last 25 years, which is an incredible feat to be able to do that, where China was building cities for 8, 9, 10 million people that weren't even living there yet. So we've had this massive urbanization in China, and in order for that to happen and to happen as quickly as it has, the Chinese have had to support um, a global shipping strategy, which means owning ships, which means building ships, because it needed the raw materials to do that. If we get to the point where the Chinese are now penalized for bringing Chinese-built ships are penalized bringing goods to America, what that might do, in effect, is going to increase costs, whether it's the Chinese manufacturers, the shipping companies, or the consumer in America who picks up that cost. It doesn't really, no one really knows at this point, but what it will do is increase costs. And as it's about 50% of the fleet is Chinese-built vessels, there's no question that the costs to bring those products into America will go up. So I think that the penalties, the idea of the penalties on Chinese-built ship was to stimulate shipbuilding in the US, um, and help the maritime industry, a renaissance in American shipbuilding. And I think that idea is going to take decades and decades and decades to achieve, and it's unrealistic in today's world where the cost of building a ship in America can be multiple times what the cost of building a ship in China would be. And I think that uh, America and its allies already controls a large portion of the owned ship owning fleet in today's world. And so incentivizing American built ships at the moment just doesn't seem to be realistic.
All right, I see. Thank you, Tom. And thank you for watching. For more financial content like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.